I remember it was a Wednesday night, one of those quiet evenings when you hear every little creak in the house. The air smelled slightly of rain, the kind of smell you get when it's a bit windy outside. It was my folks' bowling night, leaving me the run of the house. I was in the living room lounging on the couch with a worn-out copy of my favorite mystery novel. The rhythmic tick of the old wall clock was the only sound breaking the silence. I was lost in the world of my book, the low hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen providing a comforting background noise. Around 9, I heard this sound, a tapping sound on the living room window, faint but distinctly rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. My initial thought was a tree branch disturbed by the wind was likely the culprit. I dismissed it, returning my attention to the suspense unfolding in my book. However, the tapping persisted, increasing in volume and intensity. It was no longer random, like the wind might cause, but rhythmic, like a coded message or a deliberate signal. The hair at the back of my neck stood up. Despite the unsettling feeling, I gathered my courage and stood up from the comfort of the couch. My heartbeat felt like a drum in my ears as I slowly approached the window. I kept reassuring myself, "It's just the wind, it's just the wind." The sight that greeted me when I pulled back the curtain made my heart drop into my stomach. A man, I couldn't make out his features clearly, stood outside. His face was mere inches from the glass, eyes wide and unsettling, seemingly staring directly into my soul. His hand was raised, his knuckles ghostly white in the dim street lamp's light. Fear coursed through me, locking me in place. It felt like ages, him standing there, his creepy, malicious smile never leaving his face. Then he resumed his tapping on the window. Tap, tap, tap. That's when I finally found my voice and let out a scream, a sound so raw and full of terror that it shocked me. Hoping it would scare him off, I sprinted into the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and dialed my parents. Words poured out of me in an incoherent jumble as I explained what was happening. I could hear the panic in their voices as they reassured me that they were on their way. I curled up on the kitchen floor, phone pressed to my ear, the spacious house suddenly too open and empty. Every shadow was a threat, every noise a danger. My parents arrived home in what felt like an eternity, but the man was gone. The police were called, and I gave my statement, but they couldn't find any trace of the man who had terrorized me. I don't know who that man was, what he wanted, or why he chose me. I just know that he instilled a fear in me that I've never felt before. That night I didn't sleep. Every small sound had me jumping, expecting to hear that tap, tap, tapping on the window. This happened to me a while back, on a quiet evening when I was just kicking back in my living room, enjoying a cold beer and watching a football game. It was just a regular Tuesday, nothing special. Just as the second half of the game was starting, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted this strange car parked on the street in front of my house. It was a beat-up, dusty blue sedan I'd never seen before. The street was usually empty at this hour, so it caught my attention. Next thing I know, there's this knock on my front door. It was a soft knock at first, like they weren't sure they wanted to be heard, but soon it became persistent, almost aggressive. I have this rule, see, I don't answer the door to strangers, especially not when it's getting late. So I stayed put, hoping they'd get the message and leave. The knocking didn't stop though, it got louder. I could feel this sense of dread building up in my gut. Something wasn't right. I decided to take a peek through the window, and I saw a man. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat, and wore a cap pulled low over his face. He kept looking around nervously, then back at my front door. He started knocking again, harder this time, like he was getting desperate. I didn't recognize him, and that car was still there, idling. It hit me then. Was I about to be robbed? Fear set in. I'm a pretty big guy, not easily spooked, but this was straight out of some horror movie. I quietly locked the living room door, tiptoed upstairs, and began checking all the rooms. I wanted to make sure all windows were locked and I was safe. My heart was pounding in my chest as I peered out the bedroom window. The guy was still there, knocking, looking more frantic. I quickly pulled my phone from my pocket, my hands shaking as I called the police. The operator was calm, told me to stay quiet, stay safe, and said they'd send a patrol car over right away. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about being brave. I was scared out of my mind. I didn't want to confront this guy, didn't want to be a hero. It seemed like forever before I saw the flashing lights of a police car outside. They questioned the guy while another officer came to check on me. Turns out the man was from a couple of towns over and had the wrong house. When the adrenaline finally wore off, I felt drained like I'd run a marathon. The police assured me it was a misunderstanding, but that night I double-checked all my locks before finally managing to get some sleep. I was home alone on a regular Friday evening. Mom and Dad were out at some charity thing and my sister was sleeping over at a friend's. I was chilling on the couch eating popcorn and watching some movie when my phone buzzed. A text. No big deal, right? It was a number I didn't recognize, but that wasn't too strange. Could have been a wrong number or a friend who changed their digits. But when I read the message, I felt this cold chill. It said, "We know you're alone. If you don't want to get hurt, send $500 to the following account." I didn't know what to do. I just sat there staring at my phone. I checked the front door, made sure it was locked. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. I texted back, "Who's this?" hoping to God it was a sick joke. The reply was immediate. "Don't worry about who we are. Worry about what we'll do if you don't pay." I felt sick. I wanted to throw up. I was alone in the house and someone was threatening me. I thought about calling my parents, but I didn't want to worry them. Then I thought, what if they're in on it? Paranoia was creeping in every corner of my mind. In the end, I did the only sensible thing I could think of. I called the cops. I told them everything and they told me to stay on the line, stay safe, and that they'd be sending someone over. The wait for the police to arrive was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the trees outside had me jumping. When they finally arrived, I nearly cried with relief. They looked through my phone, took some notes, and told me they'd do their best to trace the number. They also told me it was most likely some sort of scam, but they'd stay in the vicinity just in case. I didn't sleep a wink that night, even after my parents came home. I just kept thinking about the texts, wondering who was on the other end of the line and why they'd targeted me. Next morning, I got a call from a police officer. They'd traced the number to a kid from my school. He had been doing it to several people, apparently thinking it was funny to scare us like that. He got suspended and is facing some serious charges now. I wish I could say that I felt totally relieved after hearing that, but I don't. The whole experience left me with this lingering unease, like a shadow in the back of my mind. What I want people to know is, this stuff happens. It's not always about hauntings or otherworldly things. Sometimes it's just a person behind a screen, thinking it's funny to play with someone's fears.